Right, good morning everyone. Welcome to the England Athletics AGM. Just to also welcome, we have a live stream this morning, so we've got people who can see us in the room and any comments that are made. If something isn't particularly easy to hear, then I might ask people to, if there are any comments or questions, to repeat them, particularly so that it can be heard on the live stream as well. My name is Gary Shaughnessy. I'm the Chair of England Athletics. The format for this meeting is remarkably consistent with previous years, but it's the content that matters, I guess. We have a number of board members here today. If I could just ask the board members to put their hands up, those who are here. Yes, please, Connie. So it's great to have those in attendance. We also have, for example, Clive isn't here today because he's doing a sports hall event, which is a great example of the commitment that he makes week in, week out, as I know a number of you in the room do as well. We've also got England Council members. Could I ask you to put hands up as well, please? So thank you very much for your attendance and also for all your help over the course of the last year. You can see there are 10 council members, including myself as a member, but also including the chair, Matthew Dalton, who's also on our board. Following the AGM, there's going to be a regional councillors conference, and that will discuss a variety of issues around the sport. And I know a number of you are here to attend that as well. We've got proxy voting in place for this meeting. What we'll do is, first of all, identify if there's a show of hands in the room. If it's an issue that is something that is fairly clear-cut, then I think that would be managed in the room. If not, then we would take a poll and go through the actual proxy votes in detail to get an exact number. I'd also welcome Sam Pritchard there at the back. Sam is from Muckle. Muckle are our lawyer, and she is here. Sam is here to make sure that the process is effective and legal and accurate as well. So the first item is to approve the minutes of the 2023 AGM. Are we comfortable? I'd ask Dave in particular, are we comfortable to do that on a show of hands? Yeah. So could I have a show of hands? Or first, could I have a proposer? Thank you very much, Jane. And a seconder? Thank you very much, Janice. All those in favour of approving the minutes from last year? Thank you very much. The second item is to approve the minutes of the special general meeting which was held on the 10th of June. Again, we're comfortable taking the same approach. So could I have a proposer, please? Thank you very much. And a seconder? Thank you very much. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you very much. And then matters arising, and these were obviously detailed in the material with the AGM, but matters arising on both meetings. Again, if we're comfortable with doing this as a show of hands in the room, any proposer, please? So you're happy to propose that the matters arising from both meetings are accurate? Thank you very much. And a seconder? Thank you, Jane. All those in favour? Any against? Right, thank you. So the first thing we'll now then move on to is the director's report, and I'd like to hand over to Chris Jones, who will take us through much more detail than I've got here.
Thank you, Gary. Apologies about this. Hopefully it'll work and there won't be too much feedback from this. If so, I'll just talk. But nice to see you all. I hope you're all keeping well, and nice to see so many familiar faces in the room that we've worked with over the last 12 months. And forgive me if I go over a lot of the content that we ran through at the webinar as well, which some of you attended, but I think it's important to reinforce what's happened, not only in 23-24, but also to bring you up to speed in the first 6 or 7 months of this operational year as well, because there's some exciting stuff that's happening. So I'm Chris Jones, CEO of England Athletics, and it seems funny to think that 12 months have gone like that since we were last in Warwick for the AGM. But I'd like to, on behalf of the staff, the executive of England Athletics, working across the country to support our clubs, member bodies, coaches, officials, athletes, and generic volunteers, I'd like to thank on behalf of the executive, Gary as chair of the board, Matthew as chair of England Council, all the regional councillors who commit their time constructively across England to support our sport, collegiately, and supporting one another when difficult decisions are required to further our sport. We really do appreciate it, and I think there are numerous examples of where we've come together between staff and volunteers over the last 12 months to really tackle some challenging topics within our sport. So thank you. This is the clicker, yeah? Okay. Oof, dear. So we are now 3 years on since the launch of Athletes and Runners at the Heart, our strategic plan. It's a 10-year line of sight, as you'll be aware, and I won't go over too much detail, but just to say this drives everything that we do as an organisation and is reflected through our operational planning, our financial planning, and ultimately our delivery and support to the sport. There are 5 priorities, and I won't go through all of that infographic, you'll be pleased to know. 5 priorities, and I'd like to think as members who were involved in shaping not just this plan, but previous strategic plans at England Athletics, those are the kind of priorities that you would expect an organisation like England Athletics to be focused on. Clubs, club leaders and facilities, competition, coaches and officials, participation, young people and running and talented athletes. All of those are inextricably linked, they're connected, they rely on each other to be effective, and if we can get that right over the next 10 years, I think we will leave the sport in a stronger place than whence we found. Just a little bit on our relationship with UK Athletics. We are separate organisations, as many of you will be aware. We are largely funded through Sport England, who provides 36% of our annual income. That is higher than it was pre-pandemic and lower than many other governing bodies that receive funding from Sport England. We are extremely grateful to our member clubs and bodies and athletes that register with England Athletics every year. That makes up around 40% of our income. UKA are largely funded by UK Sport. About 50% of their income comes from UK Sport, the government performance arm, towards their Olympic, Paralympic, World and European preparation in the world-class programme. As you'll see there, 5 strategic priorities detailed in our plan, reflective of a growing responsibility that England Athletics has to support the domestic sport, certainly over the last 12-18 months. And that's been a key focus for directors on the board, informed by the work of the council nationally and regionally. On the right-hand side, you'll see that the roles and responsibilities of UKA have reduced, become more focused, and of course, with the development of Athletic Ventures, the new event vehicle, we're excited to see how that plays out in terms of commercialisation of major events, building a spectator and supporter base for our sport across the UK, and we wish UK Athletics the very best with that. Performance, major events, rules, safeguarding and clean sport is primarily the responsibility of UKA, and of course they are the world and European recognised, accredited, affiliated governing body. All the rest pretty much is the responsibility of England Athletics and of course our partners in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Partnership working is fundamentally important to us at England Athletics. We need to work with and through others at all levels, nationally, regionally, locally, to deliver the sport. It would not be possible without that partnership effort. So an example of which would be our continued investment over the last 12-18 months into competition providers, National Athletics League, Midland Counties, South of England, English schools, YDL has been examples of those investments, in addition to some small grants that we give to competition providers, and of course the investment through our club grants program and facility grants program. The talent hub strategy that we've had in place for a few years now, based around 4 hubs, St Mary's, Loughborough, Birmingham, Leeds, with a view to hopefully expanding that programme, finances permitting, into other parts of the country in some form over the next few years, is vitally important to supporting athletes on the youth, junior, senior talent programme, and of course their coaches, their personal coaches. Again, examples of partnership working between ourselves, Sport England, host universities, TAS, Talented Athlete Scholarship Scheme, Sports Aid, and of course government funding through the DICE programme. So partnership working is fundamentally important, and just building on that initial point I started with, there are some tough challenges in the sport that we face, so partnership working at all levels is vitally important if we're going to be successful. Sponsors are fundamentally important. That list of sponsors and partners changes from year to year because some of those partnerships, depending on the state of the economy, etc., can thrive or otherwise, but we're vitally important, certainly to our kit sponsor, vitally grateful to our kit sponsor, Cookery. We'll be going out to tender to revisit the market kit-wise in early 25. Number of other partners providing value-added services to the domestic sport, particularly around facility development, whether that be lighting, track servicing, travel for runners and athletes, and of course competition providers. I must mention London Marathon. Deliberately didn't mention them on the previous slide, so I wanted to make a specific mention to the support that London Marathon is giving to England Athletics, primarily through its talent strategy. They invest significant funds into our Talent Hub programme, and they are trying to work with us and other partners in the sport to really develop our sport for the long term. And of course, they're a core partner in Athletic Ventures alongside the Great Run Company. So we're very much appreciative of their support. The focus of the board over the last 12 or 18 months has largely been around these areas. And don't worry, I won't go through each point. But the future of track and field has taken up a lot of conversation around the board table, as it has around the council table and the national and regional level. It is something that we're acutely aware of in terms of having a challenge, having a problem, but there are opportunities of turning that around. And that, again, is going to take a collegiate approach and partnership working at all levels. In fact, we've now got a track and field review project in place in partnership with the other home countries, facilitated by Dean Hardman, who's here this afternoon at our council conference to provide an update, supported by some prominent athletes and volunteers in the sport who are getting behind that project. And we're excited about what that will bring. Capacity-wise, we need to build the capacity of volunteering in our sport, as you'll be aware. Through negotiation, England Athletics took on the responsibility for the licensing of coaches and officials at level 1 to 3, the whole coaching pathway pretty much in October 2023. We're, the right words probably to use, assured by the progress made since taking on that responsibility, but there's a lot of work to do. I have to say there's a lot of work to do in terms of reviewing the pathway, reviewing the qualifications, and making sure that they are fit for purpose for our volunteers. We have to remove bureaucracy where it exists. We have to get more people into the system, make them feel welcome, and then hopefully move people through that pathway should they desire. We are currently conducting a review of that pathway. We are looking to produce some early findings in early 2025, and we will be making some changes to the qualification pathway accordingly. I chair the Coach Education Management Group, which is pretty much the 4 home countries working together. UK, I have a seat around that table, and I'm assured by the partnership approach that has been taken by the home countries. I know Corinne Beckford is chairing the Officials Education Management Group, similar vein there. And so it's quite clear to me we don't have enough people in the system. We need to get more people in the system, and we need to think differently about the challenge, because life is very different from what it was when I was young, we were young, 5, 10, 20, 30 years ago. The world has changed, and we need to recognise that and move with the times. Engagement, obviously, we've seen quite a lot of engagement with our member clubs and bodies over the last 12, 18 months across different areas. I've mentioned track and field, the age group proposals and changes for April 2026, and of course, development of our services to off-track runners and the off-track community. We assumed responsibility in, I think it was spring, summer 2023 for Run Britain. which is now Run Events, new digital platform led by Barry Hopkins and Ben Skinner. And again, thank you to the volunteers that have been involved across the regions to help that licensing process and that transitional piece. Fundamentally important as we support road race directors, over 3,000 of them, putting on events across the country, and important that we safeguard off-track running, multi-terrain participation in this country. Culture, values and behaviours is something that we discuss and take very seriously at England Athletics, whether that be staff, board, council, the way in which we treat each other with respect. We don't always have to agree. We disagree quite a lot of the time, actually, but it's always constructive, respectful of the other person's opinion, and then we take collective responsibility in making decisions. I think that's vitally important in a sport that is so diverse and so varied and so great as athletics and running. And we call out that when it doesn't happen and it doesn't reflect our values of fun, integrity, inspiration and inclusivity. And I'd like to say again, this is something that Gary as chair of the board, Matthew as chair of council and the regional chairs take extremely seriously, and long may that continue. Income generation is vitally important for an organisation like England Athletics. I've mentioned government funding. We're shortly due to hear about our next talent grant for the next 4 years. Thank you to Sarah Benson, our Head of Talent Development, for leading that effort. Of course, that has renewed focus now, not just because of the Talent Hub strategy, but because we have a Commonwealth Games in 2026 in Glasgow that we'll be taking the team to, and we're very excited by that. But obviously, membership income is vitally important to England Athletics, and we're grateful for that, and the numbers continue to recover post-pandemic, and a little bit more on that detail shortly in terms of what's happened over the last 12 months. I mentioned sponsorship, but we have to think about how else we can generate funds. We're a not-for-profit, we're not a huge organisation, we are in the middle layer, I think, of governing bodies in terms of finances. There are around 50-odd governing bodies, there or thereabouts, that are funded by Sport England, UK Sport, probably a few more than that actually. We're in that middle layer. So our turnover, as Michael will talk you through, fluctuates a bit from year to year, and we do all the best that we possibly can to invest that back in the sport and not keep heavy reserves in place, as Michael will reference. So we're always thinking about how we can develop our sport, build our databases to be more commercially appealing, to then generate funds to invest back in the sport. So it's quite a simple formula, but quite challenging to achieve from time to time, especially given the state of the market and the state of the finances. Safeguarding welfare, health and safety, vitally important internally and also externally, and that is a key focus for the board and the council. The council challenging the board constructively, challenging then us as staff to make sure that we have policies, processes, the right people leading the right areas of work with the right attitude and keeping a focus on these areas, and more about that shortly. And finally, and certainly not last in terms of priorities, EDI and sustainability right at the top, making people feel that they belong in what is an inclusive sport. We can be more inclusive, of course we can, but we're very proud of the inclusive nature of our sport, and we have a responsibility, we feel, to lead and to set an example in areas such as sustainability and the green agenda, ESG, etc. And we're doing some exciting work in that space through partnership again with bodies like the Green Runners. So some metrics there in terms of what we delivered. I'm going to skip over this because Michael's going to go into the detail of this slide in financials in a bit, which will show where we invest specifically in those areas of work. But aligned to our 5 strategic priorities, numbers delivered over the last 12 months, and again, to bring us forward to where we are now, that's where our focus is, because it's a long-term plan. So where are we now in October 2024? Well, traffic light-wise, we need to keep building on the green things that we think are moving in the right direction, but much more work to be done. We're not complacent. We need to keep monitoring the officials conversion, in particular from level 1 to 2. We think that's important, as I said, moving people through the pathway, getting more people in, but moving them through that pathway. We need to make sure we're providing a great experience, and that doesn't just mean at a local level. That means England Athletics walking the walk, talking the talk. When we're delivering events, when we're putting on programs through our talent strategy or participation programs, providing a great experience. How can we lead if we're not doing that ourselves? And finally, just a reference in terms of some of the red flag areas, if you like, potentially. Obviously, making sure that we're supporting actively our member clubs and bodies to have good safeguarding, welfare processes and procedures in place is vitally important. From April the 1st next year, Standard 6 in the club standards, there are 7 standards that our club support managers lead. Standard 6 is mandatory from April the 1st to make sure that we've got clubs that have welfare officers in place, good policies, procedures. We're moving in that direction to being compliant, but it's no room for complacency, and the board is keeping a close eye on that and supporting the staff as we move closer to April the 1st. So Emma Hurst is in the room. Emma is our senior club support manager. Emma's done some great work in leading the team of club support managers across the country over the last 12, 18 months. And we're always looking at how we can get more resource into the club support area of work, recognising that we are a diverse and vast country in participation terms. And that's pretty much a resume of where the club support team have been focused over the last 12 to 18 months. As you'll see there, top of the list, first 3 clubs, basically, and protecting and preserving facilities wherever possible. We're getting some good news across the country with many existing track and field facilities, but there are challenges in certain parts of the country. And I'm looking at Janice Kaufman because we were exchanging and talking about the future of Gateshead this week. And there are other examples where we need to be on the front foot, proactively supporting clubs, facility providers, and influencing that retention. I'd also like to thank the regional councils for hosting the recent Regional Volunteer Awards evenings. I was fortunate to attend quite a few myself, and it's fantastic. It's a celebration of all that is positive and collegiate in our sport. Next weekend, of course, we'll be at the England Athletics Hall of Fame and National Awards evening. So just bringing the last 12 and 18 months through to where we are now. Next week, we will celebrate the great and the good in terms of inductions to our Hall of Fame, biennial inductions, and also the National Award winners. But thank you to the regional councils. Again, a plug for Emma Hurst and the work of the club support team. They pulled together over the last 12, 18 months a fantastic club leadership program. I think we're about to enter our 4th iteration of that program. And that, for me, is fundamentally important when we're talking about culture and providing good leadership, strategic leadership in clubs, operational leadership within clubs, because as we know, anyone who's been in a position of authority and leadership in any organisation at a local, regional, national level will know it is challenging. And it's challenging to keep everyone happy, and it's challenging to provide equal support with constructive challenge in a leadership position as well. But I think this is fundamentally important because we're investing in volunteers to help them to be the best that they can be as well. That's a copy of our club standards structure, 7 standards. I've mentioned standard 6. Many of you will be aware of this, but over the last 12, 18 months, this has been a key focus for us as an organisation, particularly in the area of safeguarding and welfare. Just some numbers in terms of safeguarding and compliance. I think this is really important. We were asked a question last year at the AGM from the floor around safeguarding numbers. We are getting more data and detail now from UK on a regular basis around safeguarding numbers, but we can continue to communicate with UK Athletics to make sure that we're representing our members, our constituents, to ensure that service is being well managed, well delivered, proportionate, all those things. And this is a slide that illustrates the UKA-led approach to safeguarding. So these are the safeguarding cases in the UK, led by UK Athletics. So 62 open cases. This is September now, September last month. 62 open cases, 54 of police involvement. When the police are involved, of course, that's taken away from us pretty much. The police deal with it. But 54% with police involvement makes you reflect. 34 cases have been closed in 24, and then you can see the cases since 2020 have gone up. I think there are numerous reasons for that. The Quinlan report was published in July 2020, new structures, new systems, and more people coming forward with concerns, present day or historic as well. But we need to continue to make sure that we've got good policies, procedures, and we're managing cases proportionately and fairly, of course. The average completion time there is 11 months. It's a long time. And we're always speaking to UK about timing, recognising that we're talking about people who are affected through this situation. And those are the themes of cases there you'll see. Bringing you forward to our work, which is largely around compliance. This is the work that we manage, so mitigation, prevention work in England athletics. 30 cases were open in September. 3 have police involvement. 319 cases have been closed in 24. More often than not, it's about supporting local clubs, running groups, etc., to manage affairs locally, making sure policies, procedures are in place, vis-a-vis my comments on club standards. But sometimes, you know, we need to get more involved, and those cases would take more than 1 month. But the average completion time is 1 month, and communication is vitally important in all of that between all parties. And Sarah Harrison leads that work for England Athletics, reporting into Emma Davenport. Most of the issues are around governance, policy, and those kind of things. Okay, coaches and leaders over the last 12 months, we've trained that number of individuals, and that number, of course, has been delivered. We are finding over the last 12 months it's taken responsibility for this area of work, that we're able to connect better with the whole system, because we're responsible not just for the licensing process, but the content setting, tutor training, and the course deployment. So that's better now, rather than having certain aspects with the home country, certain aspects with UKA. Just makes sense, more logical, but more work to be done. And I've mentioned officials already and the importance of progressing people through the pathway. Kareem Beckford, Mark Ritchie's in the audience here today, our officials development manager. If you've got any questions or any ideas or thoughts for Mark, we are open for business. We want ideas. We want people to be involved in shaping this work. And I mentioned facilities, quietly buoyed, not complacent in terms of the situations we face with track and field facilities. We have to recognise that partnership working, again, that word, partnership working, is vitally important if we're to protect, preserve and develop our facility stock, indoor or out. We've worked very actively recently between Birchfield Harriers, UK, England Athletics, the City University, Birmingham City Council and others to try and influence the future of the High Pack in the West Midlands. Ed Hunt has led that on our behalf. No room for complacency there. We think we will retain that as an athletics facility and hopefully all the events, but there will be a different configuration, we think, but something is better than no indoor facility at all. But we recognise that the West Midlands and Midlands area in particular is poorly served through indoor training and purpose-built competition facilities. We continue to run our #RunAndTalk campaign in 2023, and we've recently advertised this year's campaign as well. That was led by Harry Stowe, our EDI and Sustainability Manager. Harry left us, sadly, 2 months ago to take a job in Hampshire, and we've just recently appointed a new EDI Sustainability Manager. But the importance of our work around equality, diversity, inclusion is very much about influencing internal plans and policies at source, but then the work of volunteers who are delivering our sport across the country and influencing their thinking, their delivery as well. So it's a strategic function that we have and a campaigning function that we have that's very, very important. I've mentioned the work with Green Runners, and also I did want to make a specific mention to our Sporting Equals partnership. We've been inaugural partners in the Sporting Equals Award for the last decade, and they were recently held in London. And a lot of our track and field athletes and coaches and contributors have been recognised through that programme. And it's vitally important. They act as standard bearers, as role models for the next generation coming through, and it's something that we're very, very proud of. Our athlete panel that we formed in the last 12 months that reports into our board is another project I'm particularly proud of and demonstrates the importance of collaboration. Thanks to Sarah Benson and Marilyn Okoru, who have led that project on behalf of the EA board. Really important that we get the voice of the athlete shaping policy and process. And I'll give a reference to Personal Best Foundation, 2 years old, was launched a couple of years back at the Drapers Hall. We're very excited by the progress Personal Best Foundation has made in the first 2 years. They have a research partner now in Leeds Beckett University. They've just published a theory of change model around sport and social impact, but particularly athletics, run, jump, throw. They've made some small grants and they've invested in some pilot projects. Lewisham springs to mind, where we're setting up a new community club and activity there as well on the ground with other partners. So I'm excited by the work of Personal Best Foundation. And for those who aren't aware, Personal Best Foundation was in the pipeline for a number of years. And it's focused very much on removing barriers, addressing inequalities where they exist to get more young people involved in our great sport of track and field. We've got some brilliant trustees, and we've also got some fantastic founding ambassadors and patrons from the sport. And I must mention Fatima Whitbread, who's been wonderful in the first 18 months, 2 years of Personal Best Foundation, who also launched a lovely book this week, which some of you may have seen. All our championships, we went to a 2-weekend model this summer for the first time, Friday to Sunday. Not universally popular, I would say, initially. Prior to that, some concerns. I'm looking at David Ashbourne now from an official's perspective. We had to take some pressure out of the domestic calendar, pretty much, and create more flexibility, a few more free weekends. We think it worked well. The feedback from athletes has been very popular, as Sarah's nodding. Room for improvement, of course there is, as with everything, and we'll do a full review on that ahead of 2025. We'll be back at the Alexander Stadium. But of course, before that, we've obviously got the National Cross-Country Relays in Berryhill Park with our partners at the ECCA next weekend, and then cross-country leads into indoor season, etc., and we'll be back in Sheffield. So over the last 12, 18 months, we've continued to deliver all of that work. And I just wanted to make the point that all of our championships, pretty much all of them, are inclusive at source with para events as well. I must mention, of course, this year we introduced or reintroduced in partnership with Birchfield Harriers the inaugural England Athletics Club Relays, which I think was, by common view, successful, but we need more clubs there next year, and hopefully that will build momentum as well. We are hosting a competition conference on the 14th of December this year, but last year we hosted another event, and it's vitally important that we have such mechanisms. We're bringing people together to talk constructively about the future, what's working well at the moment, where are the challenges, where are the opportunities, and we engage with each other constructively, respectfully, to help shape plans for the future. So if you haven't got that in the diary, 14th of December 2024, please do. It's at Alexander Stadium, and there'll be a key focus for that competition conference of track and field. We've continued to invest in our partnership with Roster Athletics, and we are pleased to see more competition providers embracing Roster as a digital solution for event entry and management. Of course, in 2023, August, we were delighted to take the Commonwealth Youth Games team to Trinidad and Tobago, 24 medals, strong performances, and we believe that Commonwealth Games Federation will be going out to tender shortly for the next Commonwealth Youth Games. Now they've sorted Glasgow for 26. Vitally important that we provide good championship competition opportunities, good international opportunities to produce the next Phoebe Gills, Max Bergin, Molly Caldry, George Mills, all came through the pathway. Examples and role models for others to follow on the Youth Junior Senior Talent Programme. Of course, we got the Commonwealth Games in 26 in Glasgow. That will be aspirational for many of those athletes. And I'm really pleased over the last year or so, you know, some of the stats that we're getting coming out of the talent programme, particularly those athletes that have taken that bridge from junior to senior success, competing in Paris in the Olympics and Paralympics. You know, it's a vital part of the work that we do to provide these opportunities. And wasn't Georgia Bell's success in Paris a wonderful example of someone who produced good success at age group level, did other things, and then came back to our sport and delivered what she delivered in Paris. Good example on so many scales about late development, about perseverance, resilience, and well done to Trevor Painter and Jenny Meadows, her coach. Again, through Sarah's leadership, with the support of Sport England and other partners, we're managing to invest more time, more resource in this talent space, which is vitally important. Around 1,000 athletes, we think, being supported now through our Youth Junior Senior Talent Programmes. And we take international teams to compete home and abroad each year, on and off the track, and that's a feature of what we do, and we're always looking at ways in which we can bolster that programme to provide that added value to our athletes and coaches and team managers. I mentioned run events. I'll move on from that. And just a plug for this has been in the pipeline over the last 12, 18 months or so, and I know people like Clive Poyner and other individuals have been actively involved in shaping this from the volunteer community. We're going to launch at the National Running Show in January an unattached runner membership scheme, affiliate scheme. Ultimately, it's a premium scheme, so it will cost more than it will for club athletes and registered club runners to be part of the EA family. Hopefully, it'll drive more people into clubs, ultimately. But it's a scheme that we're looking to attract those unattached runners into the EA family with. And we believe that, there are several million runners out there that aren't part of clubs. And if we can bring them into our fold, maybe they come through park runs, through run together groups, then that has to be successful. That has to be successful. So, it's been a great summer, 2024. Last 12 months, we're pleased with, not complacent, but pleased with direction of travel. And I wanted to just conclude by thanking all of you and thanking all the volunteers who provide all their skill, all their efforts, all their knowledge and understanding of our great sport to benefit others. And I'll hand over to Lorna Booth, who's going to give an elected director's address. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everybody. As Gary said, Clive's unable to come today because he's at Sports Hall Championships, but I'm going to report on his behalf. It's really difficult, really hard to follow on Chris's presentations because he's so thorough, and he's actually covered a lot of the things that I was going to say today, so I'll try not to repeat. But first of all, I want to thank those clubs that have nominated me for another term. It's been a really hard and busy year, but I'm up for the challenge. I'd also like to thank, as Chris has said, the many coaches and officials for their hard work, the club chairs and secretaries, and the numerous volunteers that are helping us to keep the sport going. Not forgetting the county and regional council members, as well as the staff. So a lot of hard work has been done in the sport, but I don't think we brag enough about it. And indeed, I don't think we hear enough about it. We recently had our regional awards, where we had a total of 738 nominations and a total of 9,213 votes. From our nominations, we show where our sport has had a social impact. I just want to highlight some of the wider support our sport offers through our clubs. So we have many community projects happening, but here are a few. So we've got food bank runs, fundraising for local leisure centres. The Links Club has raised over £1,000 for St Barnabas Hospice. Elvit Striders have raised £1,000 for a rape crisis centre and have donated toiletries to a local sexual assault referral centre. Levensholm Runners are fundraising for an installation of a defibrillator, improving safety for their clubs and for the local community. Our Club Improvement Fund is now in its third year. We've had 73 clubs awarded grants this year, and the total of 35,262. Last year, we awarded approximately 50,000. As members-elect, Clive and I have been extremely busy, and we've been sitting on various panels and subcommittees. I'm going to go over a little bit of what Chris said today, but for the last 12 months, Clive has been a member of the Task and Finish group that has been developing the non-club membership affiliation scheme. Run EA is planned to launch at the running show in January with the twin aims of generating income from the 5 million casual non-club runners while simultaneously opening awareness of the EA brand and signposting for our network of clubs with the potential of volunteer recruit. The additional income will be ploughed back into the sport to consolidate the development of grassroots. I myself have been involved in supporting the EDI manager, working on the implementation of the diversity strategy to have equal opportunities embedded into our sport. As you know, EA have taken over the responsibility of coaching and coaches, so this is a large piece of work with review of the entire system taking place before we can implement the many changes. So I'm going to stop there on stats and what's been going on. I just want a few words that I have to say. So I've been in the sport for a very long time, from I was a very young age. And I have a passion that keeps pulling me back into the sport, no matter how many times I decide to step away when I get tired of the attempts to make the sport a toxic environment for whatever reason. Everyone that chooses to be in the sport has a role. So what is it? Let's just think about why we're in the sport. We don't all agree on everything, but we have to learn to work together. One man cannot build a house, it takes a team. There are a lot of negativities in our sport, and it has taken away energy and finances which could be best used elsewhere. We talk about retention in our sport, but the more toxic it becomes, the less inviting it is for the athletes and their parents. The world is changing, and if we want to survive as a sport, we have to make changes. We have to make it inviting, we have to be competitive, we have to move with the times, but we must work together, bottom up and top down. We have to have a more professional approach. Just for a minute, please stop listening to Chinese whispers and read up. Ask questions, go to the source, reflect before putting pen to paper. If you feel you can offer advice, please do it in a professional manner. Let's be more respectful to one another. We have to learn to work together. If you're not giving positive energy, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Let's reflect and move together in a more positive direction. We're all human. We all have feelings. We all have families. Thank you. Just going to pass on to Matthew.
Thank you very much, Lorna. And given that we've had Chris's tour de force and then those poignant remarks from Lorna, goodness knows where I can go from here. And I shan't speak for very long at all for obvious reasons. In fact, I think probably just telling you where the fire escapes are and the details for lunch is probably all I've got left to say. But nonetheless, I shall just cover a few bits and bobs with respect to England Council. And it is my job, I think, within the agenda, it specifies that I must formally indicate the members of England Council. I shan't do those in detail because Gary has already done that previously in the slide, but I'd like to particularly thank members of England Council, obviously, for their hard work over the last 12 months. Please excuse me, I always tend to drift, as Chris has done, into the present day necessarily, although this is theoretically a report on the 12 months ending 31st of March 2024, but thank you to my colleagues on England Council, obviously, for their hard work, and thank you, as Chris was saying, to the wider council family. We've got 70, 80 councillors all doing fantastic work across the country, day in, day out, many of them having significant roles in their clubs on an administrative, coaching, officiating or other basis, and I thank them for their additional support in the governance structure of EA. Just in terms of the working of the England Council and councils more widely, I've tried particularly to take England Council around the country over the last 12 to 18 months. We had the privilege or the ability to have meetings, dare I say, at the Alexander Stadium until quite recently. And of course, the changes structurally in UK has meant that they're not using that in the same guise as they were. And so we have been forced, and I'm delighted we've been forced to move out of Birmingham, actually, because that's given us the opportunity to move all over the country. We've been in the southwest and the northeast over the last 12 months in Gateshead. And we're going to Manchester, I'm delighted to say, in November for our England Council meeting, and the intention is to have a regional council in the northwest in Warrington the night before. So that gives us an opportunity, or me particularly, to talk directly to the regional councillors there in advance of our England Council meeting. And with respect to how the council has worked over the last 12 months, also worth talking about what we call the Monday night calls. COVID effectively created these, actually, and I think they're a fantastic idea, allowing the council the ability either at England level, the national grouping, or through the whole council to keep up to date with hot topics. We only meet 4 times a year as England Council, and although we get the ability to dive into topics in detail at that stage, 4 times a year isn't a great deal. We're all volunteers, and so inevitably we have to restrict ourselves to how many times we can meet in person all day. And so those calls at 6 o'clock on a Monday, alternating between England Council and the whole council, great opportunity for Chris, other members of SLT, other members of staff, giving us the ability to keep up to date with hot topics, test the temperature across the sport, get feedback, either whether that's on the off-track season, cross-country, as to how things are evolving. And so these are working very well and will certainly continue under my leadership going forward. In terms of what we've done in the period running up to the end of our last financial year, particularly pleased, given the nature of the topic, that we held 9 webinars with respect to the change of age groups, 3 being thematic, which happened, if I recall, in early March of last financial year, and then the 9 forums following those, concluding, if I recall, in the first week of April, giving the opportunity for the whole sport to be able to feed in their concerns, to be able to feed in their thoughts about that, and making sure that nobody was left unlistened to. Chris has mentioned coaches and officials education. It's no secret that particularly the officials pathway is a great interest of mine. Chris is absolutely right. That conversion rate between level 1 and level 2 is critical, particularly because the changes we've made at level 1, the ability for us to see people moving in the pathway between 1 and 2 to 3 really indicates where we've got the officials of the future, because of course we need people to rake the pit, we need people to do the relatively simple roles on the ground, but we also need people to take responsibility, and that's why the pathway and the mentoring scheme, I see Mark, as Chris made reference to in the audience, very much in favour of the mentoring scheme, piloted in 3 areas over the last 12 months, and I know Mark is actively looking at how we can roll that out across the country over the next 12 months, because the way we will get people to progress through the officiating pathways, not only to offer the formalised education programme that clearly we're looking at the changes to the pathway that might be effective, but it's also for us to make sure that we've got people on the ground, club by club, county by county, region by region, who are supporting that, because there's nothing better than somebody like, I can see my colleague Paul Brooks and my own council, some of Paul's experience, putting his arm around somebody at the end of a match, giving them a well done and giving them a few pointers, because that is what will help them progress just as much necessarily as a formal education that we as a governing body or UKA in the case of level 4 can provide. Chris has mentioned standards already. Clearly, one of the focuses for this organisation, particularly the CSM team, is going to be standards. We are turning on, for want of a better phrase, Standard 6, as Chris mentioned, and so it will be a requirement to meet Standard 6 before the 1st of April 2025 for affiliation, and that is absolutely the right thing to do. We have got to make sure the sport is in a place that it can meet that standard, but Chris is right that last but certainly not least was the issue of safeguarding on screen a little bit earlier, and we have got to make sure that our sport is safe, whether that be for volunteers or for children or, for that matter, adults running on the road. So it's absolutely the right thing to do, and we will be ensuring that the sport is pushing in that direction. And thank you particularly to CSMs for everything they do, but particularly for the work they're going to do in the next 6 months in making sure that clubs across the country meet Standard 6 in advance of the next affiliation year. Our job, as Chris has said, at England Council and regional councils is to hold the board to account. We continually do that. I particularly do that, I say with a smile on my face, with respect to the area of officials, and our chief executive will know, but we do that consistently. Having said that, it is as critical that I hold Gary's feet to the fire, that I have an excellent working relationship with him, and that is something I'm particularly proud of. Dare I say, in the past, that relationship has been less constructive than it might, and I'm delighted that I have a excellent, positive, constructive relationship with the chair of the board, and that allows that constructive criticism between me and him to be taken on board appropriately, and for us to go forward in the governance of the sport in the way that we need to make the change. Because Chris is right again, and Gary's made reference to this previously, that change we need to make. we cannot accept the status we have, the deterioration in some parts of the sport. Some of our sport is particularly numerically successful, and Chris and others have made reference to that already, particularly the off-track section of the sport. Track and field is not numerically successful. We have got challenges in track and field, and we can, if we so wish as a governing body, preside over a deterioration of our sport. Or, as Lorna was so correctly saying, we can get together and look forward at the changes we need to make. And I will support the board, where appropriate, in taking the difficult decisions that ensures that our sport will be successful at an Olympic level and below in the next decades and centuries to come. So thank you to Gary for being such a constructive and supportive partner on the board for that. Two other things I'll mention before I conclude are the awards. I always say when I go to award ceremonies, and I had the privilege of being last in the East not too long ago in Bury St Edmunds, it is a wonderful night, a wonderful opportunity to say thank you to the volunteers who put in dozens, hundreds, thousands of hours over the 12 months preceding for all of their work. This sport, the nature of this sport, it is not run on a professional basis, it is run on a voluntary basis almost totally. And without volunteers, this sport would collapse tomorrow, there's no question. We at England run a tiny percentage of the competitive nature of our sport. The rest of it is run by incredibly hard-working volunteers, and is therefore critical that the whole of our governing body says a big thank you to those and recognises those in the way we do at the Volunteer Awards, and as Chris has mentioned, I have the privilege of going to and presenting at the awards in Leicester next weekend, the National Awards, and that will be a wonderful experience as always. And the final thing I will talk about of substance is the elections. The elections process will start very, very soon, formally, I believe, in early 2025. And so for anybody in the room, I accept most of you in the room have already got massive jobs in the sport already. There might be more people online necessarily who are club administrators, people in clubs looking for a greater, wider geographical footprint and challenge. Then what I would say is come forward. It's been a fantastic experience for me, having the opportunity to shape the sport, be involved in the governance structure. Clearly, I have the privilege of sitting on the board, but I know all of my regional chairs feel the same thing across the country. It is what greater privilege in our sport is there to shape it for the years to come, and therefore say, come forward, you won't regret it. Thank you, all of you, to what you do in the sport. Thank you particularly to my councillors. It's been a great privilege being chair of England Council for the previous 12 months. Whether I have the privilege going forward is in the gift of my colleagues, but I'm very much looking forward to it because I want to change our sport for the better, as no doubt all of you do in the room. And on that note, I believe, Mr. Chair, I hand over to Michael Davis to go through the most fun part of the day, the numbers, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Matthew, and good afternoon, everybody. Or good morning still. Hopefully you've had a chance to avail yourselves of the annual audited accounts for the year 2023-24. If you've not, they're available online. Please do so. They make very good bedtime reading for those of you who struggle to sleep. This presentation is really a summary of the detailed numbers. I wouldn't spend all day going through that with you, but if anyone has any detailed questions, I'm more than happy to take questions at the end of the presentation or over coffee a bit later. The audit of the accounts took place in June. We had new auditors, as we approved last year, and they spent several weeks working with us. I'm pleased to say that for another successive year, they've offered an unqualified opinion on the accounts, which is a very good outcome for us. They've also confirmed it's appropriate for us to move forward on a going concern basis, which is very critical, which says that we have sufficient resources to manage ourselves over an 18-month period in terms of any liabilities that should ensue. Even more so that our audit finding reports, there were no significant findings on that report in terms of any points of learning or correction, which is very good for us considering that we implemented a new finance system during the year. And we also had changes in our finance team, which was quite a challenge for us. So to come out of that with a positive result is very good for us. In terms of the numbers, as I said, a summary of the outcome for the year. The first column of numbers reflects the outcome of our financials, which is a 36k surplus, which was against a budgeted surplus of 40k. And you can see that compared to our 2023 numbers, it's a significant improvement on the bottom line where we had a deficit of £128,000. So that's very positive for us as a business. In terms of some of the key variances, you'll note that the income improved by 4% compared to the previous year, which is primarily due to our athlete registration, club affiliation monies, and our road race licence income, and some improvement in our commercial partnerships arrangements. Expenditure also went up, and that really is to, as Chris said, we are an in and out sport. The monies we get in, we spend on the key projects and activities that delivers the services for the year. And also notable is our interest receivable, where we benefited from high interest rates across the banks. So we try and deposit our monies in high interest accounts where possible, and that's given us a significant success for the year. In terms of our budget for 2025, we're declaring that so you can see what we're targeting. Again, another year of surplus is the plan, with increases across our income and expenditure lines. Again, really focused at delivering those 5 key priorities for the year. We thought this slide would be quite useful because it gives us a view as to how we're performing at a surplus and reserves level. The board is responsible for ensuring that we have appropriate reserves for the company, and we measure our reserves requirement on a calculated basis, which says that are we able to wind down quietly and successfully should we need to. The orange line is our closing reserves, which moves in line obviously with our surplus, with the blue line at the bottom. And the green line is our reserves requirement, where we calculate what would we need in any circumstance. That gap is between the orange and the green line is what the board and the Audit and Assurance Committee review on an ongoing basis to make sure that gap can be covered if need be. But more than all, that the 4-year plan that we have in place, which these numbers are based on, says that we have a plan to achieve the reserves requirement, and indeed, should the plan maintain, to go beyond that. And that will give the organisation surplus reserves to invest in whatever programmes were deemed appropriate for us. So we thought that'd be quite useful for you to see that. This slide, as Chris mentioned, puts money on the activities and the numbers that you saw on his slide. I think it's really important to say that we're investing in certainly 24-25, £8.9 million in the sport across those key areas. People often say, where does the money go? We get money from Sport England, we get money from our athlete registration, money from our clubs. This is where it goes. It goes back into the sport to ensure that we can deliver our key priorities across clubs, competition, coaching, talent, and our digital and governance matters that really supports all of that activity. So I think that's really useful for people to take note of, that the money is being used wisely, prudently, to ensure that we can continue to deliver the sport. That is it from my perspective, unless you've got any questions. If not, I'm happy to hand over to Janice, Chair of Audit and Assurance.
Thanks, Michael. So as you heard, my name is Janice Holmes. I'm one of the independent directors on the board. And as Lorna explained, the elected members are very busy, involved in a number of activities. We as independent directors also get involved in a number of different task and finish groups. We have roles on committees. And the reason I'm standing in front of you today is that one of my roles is to be chair of Audit and Assurance Committee. So just a few words from me on the work of the Audit and Assurance Committee over the past financial year. So 2023-24 was really a year of consolidation for us, having welcomed a number of new directors onto the committee during 22-23. And just by way of reminder, the committee comprises 4 independent directors and 1 member-elected director. Our skills and experience are from a variety of different backgrounds professionally, and we also reflect quite varied aspects of engagement with the sport of athletics and running. That to me is really important and key to the work that we do as a committee supporting the overall objectives of the organisation. It means that when we have discussions, we really do have deep discussions, we bring different perspectives, and then we ultimately have a collaborate with each other in order to reach a final decision on the way forward on our areas of responsibilities. And those responsibilities for us as a committee centre around what we have always had the focus on, and that's oversight of audit, external reporting and risk management for the organisation. So first of all, in relation to the 23-24 audit, which Michael has just talked about, and the external reporting that goes with it, this was our first year of our working relationship with Buzzicott, who you may remember were appointed after a competitive tendering process during 2023. This financial year's audit outcome was reviewed as usual in a one-to-one meeting between myself as chair of the audit committee and the lead Buzzicott partner for England Athletics. After that, we had a full review as part of the clearance meeting, which involved the full Audit and Assurance Committee, as well as members of the SLT. And then the final stage of review for the audit is approval by the board, and this year we completed that on the 26th of September. You've already heard from Michael just a few minutes ago, and I'm pleased to confirm as Chair of Audit and Assurance that the auditors concluded that the director's use of the going concern basis of accounting in preparation of the accounts was appropriate. The appointment of those auditors for the current financial year will be voted on as part of the formal business of this AGM directly after I finish speaking. During the year, in relation to our other important role, which is risk management, we continue to have a programme of biannual deep dives on areas from our risk management profile. In addition to that, we have regular scheduled monitoring and review sessions looking at the strategic risk register and the risk heat map. So I hope that's been a helpful overview of our work, but if you'd like any additional information about the Audit and Assurance Committee or any of the other board committees, you can find that in the governance statement, which is part of the annual report, which is available as part of the papers for this AGM. Thank you, and I think I'm handing back to Gary now.
Thanks, Janice. As Janice said, we have a task to appoint or consider the recommendation to appoint the company's auditors for the year ending 31st of March 2025. So I don't think on this one I have to ask for a proposal, do I? So could I have all those in favour of reappointing Buzzicott for the next year? Could you raise your hands, please? Thank you. Any against? Thank you very much. Could I add my thanks to Janice for the huge amount of work that goes into evaluating and running the Audit and Assurance Committee, as well as keeping the whole risk matrix of the organisation under control. And I'd like to particularly thank Michael. I mean, the results are the consequence of everything that the organisation does, but having a finance lead who keeps us under control, stops us from getting at all carried away in any way whatsoever, but has actually prudently managed us through the last several years, which have been really challenging for organisations such as ourselves. I think has been outstanding, Michael, and I really appreciate it. Right, we now have 3 appointments or recommended appointments from the board, and given that I'm one of them, I'd like to hand over to Tunji to take us through that.
So, yep, we are the afternoon now. So good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon to everybody on the live stream as well. My name is Tunji Akintonikun, and I am the Senior Independent Director for England Athletics. And for those of you that may wonder what that role entails, I am a normal independent director of the board, but probably just provided a little bit of a listening ear for our chair, Gary, which has been an absolute pleasure being that listening ear over the last year, and for all your support and leadership of us as a board. But also equally, it's to ensure that there's a liaison between our board and the chair, and also to our CEO, Chris, for any critical matters that may come up. So I would act as that point of contact if there's an important discussion to go through. For those of you that I've not met or know, I also sit on our REMCO and also our Audit and Assurance Board, serving under Janice, which has been a pleasure over the last 4 years or so. And Chris mentioned it earlier, I'm also a trustee of our Personal Best Foundation on behalf of England Athletics. So again, some really great work that we do. And I won't echo a lot of the words that have been said by many of the board members up here, but one of the roles that we do have, which gives me a lot of pleasure, I live in London, and each of us as a board member is aligned to one of our councils that Matthew's mentioned, and I'd like to give a shout out and a thank you to the London Council and to Adrian Day and the team for embracing me and taking me on board. And it was a pleasure recently to be at the Volunteer Awards locally to see all the great work that's done. So my role today is threefold. I have 3 things to do. As Gary mentioned, it's for the reappointment of 2 of our board members, and also the appointment of a new board member. And with that, I'd like to start to go through those now. And I will start with the first confirmation of appointment, which is of Connie Henry as a director of the company at this AGM. And that will be done through a vote of hands here in the room. And then we will then take the count of that. And while that is then done, I will then move on to the second and the third appointments. And then I will summarise at the end the results of those as I give Sam and the team and Michael, etc., an opportunity to count up the votes, and I will then give out the results. So if we could first go to the first appointment, which is the appointment of Connie Henry. And if I could request a show of hands for that appointment to the board, that would be good. If you could keep your hands raised while the team counts, and I'll give you a nod when they've counted. Good. Thank you. We'll come back to the result of that afterwards. Sorry, any against? Of course. Thank you. And just a reminder, actually, that for those of you that are holding votes or a block, and there is a mixed of for and against within these appointments, then you should raise your hands for both to reflect the fact there's the for and against in the blocks that you have. We're good? Thank you. The second appointment is for a second term for a member-elected board member, Lorna Booth. And again, if I could have a show of hands for. Yes, yes, Dave, if you've got for both or, yeah. Yeah. No problem. If you've got both, Dave, for and against, then you put your hand up twice. We capture those? And against? Thank you. And the third appointment is to confirm the extension of the appointment of Gary Shaughnessy for a second term as director and chair of the company. With this second term recommended by the board, it's actually prudent and common law that the chair has a duty to ascertain the actual true sense of the meeting, and therefore there's a duty that I have as chair to take this to a poll. And I think that we will capture that poll, and then we'll go to poll and capture those in the room. So I think you all have your forms to be able to do that in the room, and then we'll collect those now. And that's for or against.
Can I raise a procedural query?
Yes, sure, Dave.
That this has been recommended by the board. Yeah? The last time there was a reappointment, it went to for a chairman, it went to a recruitment process or an
Open process.
open look at. And am I correct that it didn't go to an open look at this time?
Yeah, we've looked at, and you're really referring to code requirement 3.6 actually, Dave, and when you had that situation, we've actually consulted with Sport England and with their league governance on this. And, in relation to that, they've confirmed in relation to code requirement 2.6 that where an open recruitment process took place for the first term of appointment, a second term can be appointed without the need for a further open recruitment process. So that's confirmed, and if you want some more details on that, we can provide that.
So presumably there was the option.
Yes.
The board didn't.
Yes, we voted on our decision, which was that we would like to extend for a second, but that governance was looked at as part of that process.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if we could collect all of the proxy votes in the room, please. So for those of you online, if you're wondering what's happening, we're just counting up now. So I will come back to announce the result in the next 5 or 10 minutes once the count has been confirmed and then ratified by our by Muckles, our lawyers. So good afternoon, everyone. And good afternoon to everyone online on the webcast. We are now in a position to announce the results. So if everyone wants to take their seats and get ready. Good, thank you. So we had 90 members represented at today's meeting, and either in person or by submitting their proxy. As I've demanded a poll, this means that each of those members is entitled to cast their weighted voting rights determined in accordance with the company's articles. By way of a reminder, an ordinary resolution which requires a majority vote of the members participating in today's decision is to pass. Okay? I will now present the results of the 3 appointments today. And I will first start with the appointment of Connie Henry to the board, which was passed unanimously. With a show of hands in the room. In relation to Lorna Booth to serve a second term as an elected member, that has been passed by vote of hand in the room unanimously. In relation to Resolution 6 relating to the reappointment of Gary Shaughnessy, 230 votes have been cast in total for Resolution 6. Of those votes, 143 have been cast for Resolution 6 for his reappointment, and 87 have been cast against Resolution 6. So the total number of votes cast for Resolution 4 Resolution 6 represents 62% of the total votes. The total number of votes against Resolution 6 represents 38% of the vote. Therefore, Resolution 6 for the reappointment of Gary Shaughnessy as a chair. 9. Beg your pardon, it says 6 here, so it is 9. Just for the note, it is Resolution 9. So the total number of votes for Resolution 9 represents 62% of the total votes, and the total number of votes against Resolution 9 represents 38% of the total votes. Therefore, Resolution 9 has been passed for the reappointment of Gary Shaughnessy for a second term of Chair of England Athletics. In addition, for the note, 7 members abstained from Resolution 9. With that, that concludes the appointments that were put forward today at our AGM. And before I hand back to Gary, I'd just like to extend, as I've said publicly on our website, your thanks for your continued stewardship and our leadership of us as a board and of England Athletics. It has been a challenging year, but I think we're all grateful for what you want to do for the sport, the impact and societal change that you're looking to drive, and you continue to have the full support of our board. And with that, Gary, I'll hand over to you back. Thank you.
Thank you, Tunji. I think, Dave, you wanted to say a few words.
Thank you. Right, I'm Dave Faber, who some of you have heard of, and it did say on the website that come to the AGM and make your voice heard, so I'll hold them to that, and I realise I'm probably not in a popular environment here, but...
Well, just use the mics for the people on the webcast.
Oh, sorry. Both of them?
Yeah.
Not that good. Okay, thank you. So I'm Dave Paver, and I'm sort of the person who's organised the age group opposition. But it said on the website, come to the AGM and make your voice heard. So I have done. I realise this might not be the most sort of popular part to some people who are here, but I do feel a lot of clubs have put their faith in me, in the votes they've sent in, and in the emails and telephone calls I've received from these people, and I think they have put their faith in me, really. Chris said, as part of his, and many of Chris's things you agree with, and he's got a lot of work on, and many things are going well, but Chris said it's part of his thing about the partnership working being vital and mentioned engaging, and I'm afraid a lot of clubs out there of all sizes, the big clubs and the small clubs, a lot of them feel that England Athletics have failed in their partnership with clubs on age groups. These clubs and competition providers. I'm quite not surprised, right? I do notice how many competition providers are also contacting with me, and they feel that England have failed and that they've ploughed on relentlessly despite all the opposition. There was a vote of clubs and people, counties, etc., at the start of all this, and the vote was against at 62% to 25%. And the clubs were never asked again, and many experienced people in the sport did oppose the age group changes and did advise against, and really they feel that they were not listened to seriously. It's supposed to be for retention, but we feel that there is no guarantee that this is going to increase retention, and many believe that it will harm retention. We've heard how well the current system has worked in the youngsters who have gone on to either Commonwealth Youth Games and higher, that the current system does seem to have produced a pretty good turnout at the upper junior ages. We always do well in under 18, under 20 events. Converting to seniors is a difficult job, we agree, and we don't have an answer to that. I think everybody, wishes to work together on converting top juniors into good seniors. But we feel that this is going to harm retention, both in telling the athletes they're going to be in the lower year for 2 years running, and the loss of coaches, competition organisers, club and local admin people who are, frankly, upset by the way England Athletics have treated them. And I do get these. I had a phone call from a club a couple of days ago. They have no juniors at all. And yet they were contacting me to check that their form was done correctly because they were so opposed to the way that England Athletics had treated them. So I do wish to sort of make that point, really, that clubs do oppose the way England Athletics have treated them. And that this change is going to put extra work on volunteers who do have to do the changes at local level, the clubs and the competition providers. And it's asking people to do something that a lot of hard admin work to push through something that they strongly oppose. So, I just wanted to say that it is not all rosy, and a lot of clubs and a lot of people and experienced people really are opposed to the age group change, and they do feel that it hasn't been properly looked at by England Athletics and that the opponents have not been properly heard. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. I'd written a full speech to give, but given the time and also given that my nature is, I'm not going to read the speech. I'll just say a few things if that's okay. Firstly, I'd like to thank all those who voted, whether they voted for me or against me. And to your point, Dave, I think one of the things that I do think is very positive about England Athletics is the fact that we are creating a forum and enabling people to have a voice. And I accept absolutely the sincerity of your opinion. Whether I agree or disagree is not the point. The point is that all clubs have the right to have their vote, to have their voice, and to be heard. Now, I believe we've done a lot to make sure that that is the case in this situation. I also believe that we've done a lot to try and make sure we work with clubs and work with parties as we go through the age group implementation to make sure it's as effective as possible. But what I would really encourage people to do is engage, because we are at a point where we've made decisions. We think they're the right decisions, but we want people to engage and make sure that we can implement this with most effect for all of the sport and minimise impact and maximise the benefit. So I would encourage people to engage if at all possible. I also wanted to thank all of the people who've been involved with the sport. Over the last 3 years, I've learnt a huge amount. There is no doubt in my mind that there are some things I would do differently if I had the chance over again. But one thing I wouldn't do differently, which may surprise you, is I wouldn't change the fact that I became chair of this organisation. And the reason for that is I think England athletics and athletics generally makes a huge difference in the world that we have today. And it makes a huge difference for people who need that difference. We have a situation today where we create, and we should have an ambition to continue to do so, we create role models. Role models in a world that needs role models. And whether it's people like Jeff Capes, who sadly passed yesterday, whether it's Daley Thompson, Fatima Whitbread, or whether it's Keely Hodgkinson, those role models make a difference to young people and the way they see the world and the way that they see their opportunities and their future. I think heroes, and I don't use that word lightly, but heroes like Lorna Booth, who has dealt with the challenges of discrimination in this country, become a very successful medal-winning athlete in her own right, and then come back and given her time to the sport to inspire, to coach, and to help people have a future and an opportunity to realise their potential. That's something that athletics has that isn't visible in so many sports. And it's something I think we should be really proud of and we really should shout about. I also think, though, that 1 in 7 people, young people in the UK, have a mental health issue today. That is a huge number. And we are not dealing with it. And we as a sport have a real opportunity to be a driving force in dealing with it. I look around projects that I'm involved in Asia, in Africa, in America, in Europe, in Latin America, and I see those countries taking action about exactly the same issue and investing in their sport, investing in their education, and dealing with the consequences of discrimination and the consequences of lack of equality through that sport and education system. I see the same happening in the UK from other sports that push towards reinforcing the opportunity that sport gives to people to have a future and realise their potential and realise their value. We are in a position where we can do exactly that, but we can do it from a position of strength. A position where we are naturally a diverse sport, naturally an inclusive sport, and naturally a sport that is accessible to many people. But we need better facilities, we need support to clubs, coaches, officials, athletes to take that opportunity. We will not achieve that, though, unless we work together. If a government sees us divided, disputing, denying, and decrying, then they won't give us the money that we need to invest in the future of this sport. So all I would say is, please, let's embrace difference. We have different opinions. That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. But let's embrace those differences, work them through and find the best way to present this brilliant sport in the best light possible so that we can create a exciting, vibrant future that the sport and the people involved in it deserve. rather than a declining future that we just don't deserve and will do no one any good. Finally, from me, thank you so much to all those people who've been so supportive over the last 6 months. The one bit of our values that I haven't been able to say over the last 6 months is joy. I'd like to get back to saying that about the way that I think about the sport. And I know, looking at the people around this audience and the people who've been supportive to me more broadly, that we can do that. It's by far secondary to the bigger issues, but I'd like to make sure I do that going forward. Thank you very much. And I think that's the end of the meeting.
And there is lunch in the restaurant. Just go out where you came in by the lifts into the restaurant. There's lunch available. And the team will be coming in to reconfigure this room. So take every part of your belongings with you. So it will be your
Council conference back in Europe on